Mhm. Let's see what the internet has to say. Where am I? Welcome, friends. Today, we are doing another live stream. Marvelous. But today is a very special live stream because we have a live guest. Jura Rose, how are you?
Hello, ni hao, guten Tag, hola. I'm good. Ciao.
Gesundheit.
I am alive. Yes. I like how you said we have a living guest, as if I died.
We do. We do have a living guest, a really live guest. You know, I kept this one alive. The rest of them, I've always killed them before we got to 8 o'clock. So
you have me on a drip, literally on a drip, hydrated.
Yes, well hydrated. The purest form of hydration. I once got hydrated via drip. It was a strange sensation because I was sitting there and I was like, yeah, I feel terrible, and then I felt okay, and then I felt better, and then all of a sudden I was like, wow, I really need a piss. Do you know what I mean? So it's like it was going straight in.
It could be the future of all types of nutrition, just like a drip in us constantly that just feeds us everything we need, all our vitamins and fluids.
Yeah.
You just sort of like a little pack. Do you know what I mean?
I bet they would like that, wouldn't they? You know, the establishment putting a drip in everybody, controlling everybody's nutrients and stuff like that.
Drip feeding us, literally.
Literally drip feeding. Well, yes, that's right. My God, that sounds like some kind of fucking outrageous hellscape. But you know, they're growing beef. They're growing beef in a bag these days. So God knows.
We can patent this and we could make a little bit of money out of it, but people will blame us for changing the world for the worst, and you know they'll be wearing the mark of the beast or whatever, you know, and it'd be our fault. A rose and a duck.
Well, that shit has already been attached to me. I'm used to it by now, so I've been accused of ruining the world a few times. But
is that you fighting Godzilla?
That was me fighting Godzilla. People were like, why is he stopping the dinosaur? And I was like, look, fucking dinosaurs had his time. It's now the day of the duck. And Godzilla was not happy, and the people fucking sided with him. But it had to be done. He was in the way. You know what I mean? It had plans.
What's your special power? What's your special giant duck power?
I mean, it's got to be like a quack of a particular frequency that can make people shit themselves. You know, I call it the brown quack. You know,
well, at least their poops or their stool would be like, you know, very healthy with all their drip feeding that we're going to instigate.
Yes, the duck giveth and the duck taketh away.
Yeah,
that's going to be like the opening line of like my mythology. You know, like my origin story.
You could sell that soil to agriculture industries, probably Bill Gates, and he can use it for his farming.
And Victor Wong could make a perfume about it.
Yes.
You could be the perfumer. Would have a strong rose note, a strong Jura rose note. You know.
You know, if I ever did a perfume, and it was ever inspired by to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of strong roses. I find they can go a bit metallic. I like a rose with a bit of something else, like a bit of iris in there, or a bit of jasmine along with it. You know, just to sort of balance it out. I mean, there are some beautiful rose soliflors, but for me, I usually prefer rose plus. You know.
Okay, like a rose patchouli or a rose oud. God forbid.
Oh well, no, you're boring me now. Stop that.
Okay. I thought so. I thought you might get a little bit upset.
Do I look? Is my middle name Hermes? Sorry, no.
Gasps. The shade.
I know.
Jura, the shade on my channel. Pardon?
The ultimate shade. A rose mint, Carl says, like a currency.
Like a rose mint. Yes, like mint the rose. It's you've smelled Rose de Jamal though, haven't you?
Yeah, of course. I have a sample somewhere. I would probably get a bottle of that if I ever smelt it again. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those that, oh, that's actually quite nice.
It's fucking stunning. It's an outrageously nice fragrance. It's an outrageously nice fragrance. Shocking. Shocking how much I love it.
I remember it had like a weird sort of dill note to it for me. There was like a dill note, yeah, like a. And I always wondered. I knew what the material in it was giving me that sort of feeling, but it's like a eugenol, spicy dill thing.
Okay.
DJ wants me to get some porter.
Some Porta Sapo.
Yes. Well, I like the Perfumer. I'm a big fan of my Mexican friend.
Ah, Flores Rue. Flores
Yeah.
who? Flores you.
Yes, I like Flores Rue. He makes really good fragrances. Yeah, I like it.
I'll let you make that comparison. I think if I said it like that, I'd be brought up for some kind of ism.
No, do you know what? He's probably has made some of my favorite things, because I remember I said to you about Champagne Absolute yesterday. I'm enjoying it like crazy, and I'm scared because I've made a big dent in it. And you know, it's a 50ml bottle, and I'm like, oh.
Do you want us to ask the man from Japan if there's any more?
The man from Japan.
Yeah, the man who got weight.
You know that is tempting to me.
I do.
Yes.
I do. I was talking to somebody yesterday who got an 80% full 2010. No, it wasn't. It was higher than 80%. It was like 90%, between 90 and 95% full 100ml bottle of a 2010 Tuscan leather, and they paid about $140 for it. And I was fucking shook.
Yeah.
That is a bargain. You sell that for 3 times the price if you wanted to, but you would never get. You would never get. I mean, it's an original formulation. That I mean, it's a smoky motherfucker.
I'll be honest with you, Tom Ford. I've actually lost count of their discontinuations.
They've discontinued more fragrances than they've got.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I get confused. Like, oh, is that I've heard of that one, but that's been discontinued. And I thought, even you look at some, I thought that was discontinued. And they said no, they brought it back. It gets confused. You know?
Yes. Like a lot of them. I mean, would you consider something like Beau de Jour discontinued because it was in the Privé line, and then they brought it back in the Signature line? And
I don't know. I haven't smelt. I never smelt the. I've smelt the Signature line one. I never smelt the private blend version, or at least I cannot remember smelling it. So I wouldn't know if it's.
Sort you out. I've got a big decanter of it. Like I got it 30% off.
Does it smell different?
Yes, the patchouli in the private blend version is stunning. It's a beautiful, beautiful patchouli. It really is. And they replaced it with an amber wood in the Signature blend.
Oh.
Which is an absolutely horrible thing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the private blend one, but the private blend one's considerable. Like I can smell it a mile away. There's a massive amber wood in the Signature version, which just isn't there on the private one, you know.
Interesting.
And it's sad.
Interesting.
It's kind of
it's ruined.
It's kind of it has. The Signature one's just shit. I love the lavender in it though. I don't know why. I really like that lavender note. Like I don't know if it's the best. Sorry.
You really love Estee Lauder lavender, don't you?
The music for a while and the lavender and Beau de Jour is one and the same. So it could very well be the same perfume. I can't remember who made music for a while. Was it Ben Haim?
It is, yes. I don't know who made the Fougère one.
The Beau de Jour.
Yeah. I mean, it could be. Well, Carlos Bernheim works for IFF.
Okay.
I'm under the illusion that most Tom Ford fragrances were Givaudan, but that's not to say that IFF or Firmenich perfumers are making some, or even Simrise. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's usually like I usually find it's like Jan Vanier and Sonia Constant, Rodrigo Flores Rue. They're all Givaudan perfumers. who are making those Tom Fords. I don't know. I don't know. You could be onto something.
I could be. I don't know. It doesn't say. Who does it say? So it
Ah,
doesn't say.
Antoine Maison-Dieu made Beau de Jour. Was that the original or the new one or both?
I think that's the new one. I don't know if it says that about
He
the
he
old
is a
one.
he's a Givaudan perfumer.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or does
So
it not make sense?
well, Carlos Bernheim, if he did music for, he's Firmenich. No, IFF. Sorry, excuse me. I get confused.
It's hard to keep up.
I know.
Everybody's doing bits.
Bits and
Everybody,
pieces.
yeah, it is. It's mental. It's absolutely mental. Like, do you think that some designer houses have contracts with like to only use like certain oil houses?
It depends. I mean, usually, like a lot of designer brands, they usually like if you look, sometimes it's the one perfumer who would make again and again for that designer brand. Like you
Yeah.
see the same names pop up if you're looking at Carolina Herrera or John Vivatos or the Thierry Mugler fragrances. You see the same couple of names pop up. Usually it's because they have like a good relationship, the perfumer, whoever's like the creative directors or whatever. And it's easy, they just go on to the next project instead of having to pitch everything and speak about everything
Okay.
again. And it just probably things run a bit smoother in terms of just getting things out the door.
Yeah. Does it make it quicker or smoother? Because these
Prob-
two things aren't necessarily the same.
I'd say both.
Okay. Okay.
It's the reason why for example, well, you hear about it a lot. I know John Vivatos, one of my favorite perfumers, Rodrigo Flores Roux. I know he makes all of those fragrances because they have a good relationship together. They're almost like friends and they understand each other and they sort of speak the same language when it comes to scents. And obviously, he trusts him to sort of do that type of thing. So it wouldn't make sense for him to just suddenly go, I'm just going to go with some random guy at Firmenich.
Okay.
Sorry, is that
I
a
know
bit
what
of
you mean. I know what you
underwhelming
mean.
answer?
It's not. It's not what you know. It's who you know. And like humans are like that. Trust is a very strange thing. It's a
I
very
mean,
human thing. Well, it's not just a human thing, I suppose. Animals have trust as well, but like,
and we're creatures of habit as well.
yes, yes. Like, if there's no need to change something, humans won't change it. Like we're resistant to change. I'm resistant to fucking change. I know this about myself.
Yeah.
Change is fucking awful, hard to deal with. If I could
Yeah.
just go through the rest of my life doing the same thing over and over again and make everything less anxious, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
it's
Uh,
it's it's funny, but I know what you mean about perfumers understanding brands and how a brand, like, say if you make something for a brand that the brand really likes, and they feel like it fits their aesthetic and everything like that, then they're obviously going to use you again. You know, they're not going to fucking, they're not going to be like, well, we're going to go in a new direction and take a chance unless it gets stale. You know.
yeah.
It's a funny one because I see like older brands like Maître Parfumier or Gantier and L'Artisan and stuff using like the same small amount of like small pool of perfumers. And that's what builds their aesthetic, like Chanel have had an in-house perfumer, like always.
Mm.
Um, Guerlain was a family house, so that's kind of different. Of course, it's going to be a Guerlain, but they kind of adopted a style. Um, Dior went down the in-house perfumer route. Hermes. Um, that when you it's like when you employ an in-house perfumer, you are buying into their style and their ability as a perfumer to direct your brand now and in the future, you know, like, and it would be very hard for a brand to move away from that aesthetic. Does that make sense? Like it would be very hard to separate Christopher Sheldrake and Serge Luton. It would be very hard to separate Jacques Polge and Chanel, you know, at this point. So it's like, is it the brands playing safe, or is it them typecasting themselves?
It's hard, and you could say it could be different reasons for different brands and how they all react to each other. I think the sort of in-house perfumer thing was always a big thing for the older houses
Yeah,
because you have to go back. Take Chanel for example. You know, the Chanel perfumes really kicked off with Ernest Beau, and in a way, you know, Chanel herself wouldn't want to go out and outsource. And I mean, there's many perfumers around then and different companies she could have gone to.
yeah,
But obviously, she had a degree of trust in him. And again, it's that sort of relationship thing, and says, "Well, you can make my perfumes because you get me, and I trust your work and stuff." And then he sort of stays in and he does his thing, and then it almost creates like a culture. And after that, they're thinking, well, I know many of these houses sometimes, like Guerlain did it. Guerlain went for a weird stage after what's his name retired, Jean Paul, or when he was sort of going through his sort of retirement, but he was still doing bits and pieces here, where they was outsourcing to companies like Givaudan and Firmenich, and that's like late 90s to mid to late 2000s. And then,
yeah,
Gary Vassell was one of those people, and they said, "Look, should we just bring someone back in full time and do it?" Because I think when you're actually a brand, it is better to have one perfumer, because yes, you do give them a sense of more freedom because you are sort of buying into their freedom. But when you have one perfumer, you can invest in time. They can really understand, y- on a sort of a cultural level or in the company, what the identity of the fragrances are. Like what type of fragrances do they make? Because, like, again, Guerlain, if you look at like Guerlain Homme and Idil, some of the ones in the 2000s, some of them don't really smell like Guerlain fragrances. They smelled like they were outsourced to companies, if that makes sense, and they've just given them
no,
what else they was given to other companies on the market and designers, and it kind of lost its identity. Um, I think depending on the company, I think like Cartier, for example, getting Mathilde Laurent, who was like, I think she was the first female in-house perfumer ever for a company. Uh,
yeah,
I don't know what reasons why they went for that. Maybe it was like, look, Hermes are doing it with Jean Paul. Maybe it looks better that, when you're a luxury brand, that we have this one special perfume that makes all our secret perfumes. It has that sort of star quality to it, and it seems
yeah,
more, because remember, French brands, especially French brands, love that sort of artisanal feel. There's a bit more care that we have this one in-house perfumer that has all the secrets, and
yeah.
do
It's like a
magic
romantic
behind the
kind of
scenes.
thing.
Yeah, it sort of romanticizes it. So I reckon different. I mean, I think for the sake of Christopher Sheldrake, I don't think he was actually in-house perfumer at Serge Luton's. That he was working for, was it Quest? Um,
Yes,
and I think it was just more of he his style just matched, and he understood what Serge Luton wanted in a fragrance. And you just, again,
yes,
habit that if Christopher Sheldrake makes the things I like, and he understands me, and we get along, we don't argue, and if we do debate things, it's there's always a good outcome. Why would you go with someone else? You'd always keep going back to the person. It's like you. If you want a burger, do you go to the other burger place, or would you rather go to the one that you know, Miller and Carter, because that's your
Yes. That is my burger place, to be fair. And you're
because
right. You're right. If they make it the way you like it, if they make what you want and it's always nice and you enjoy it and that's what you want, you know what I mean? It's absolutely it's a no-brainer to go there. You know, it's an absolute no-brainer to go to where you want to be, and it's like the trust. I know you've raised the Serge Luton thing. I do know Serge Luton is very superstitious, and he likes a bit of astrology, right? So I think Serge Luton has. I think my theory is anyway that he has done a little bit of astrology and maybe it's a tarot on Christopher Sheldrake, and it's come out favorably, you know.
yeah.
And they all seem to all of these brands seem to find someone who basically fits their aesthetic. The Prada thing is it Prada with Matilda on, or was it Daniela Andrea? I think it's Daniela Andrea, isn't it?
Probably is, yeah. She's a great perfumer.
Yeah, she is a great perfumer, actually. All the stuff she's made for Prada has this soapy kind of vibe. They've made it part of their aesthetic, you know.
Yeah.
That they've made it their aesthetic, and it's become part of it now. In future, when for whatever reason Daniela Andrea isn't Prada's perfumer anymore, right? And they go with another perfumer. Does the new perfumer have to stick with Daniela Andrea's aesthetic?
I'd say it depends on the creative director who's given the brief at the time. Because like
Okay.
you used to give like them Prada perfumes to, I'd say, a perfume of a very different style. Their style can creep in. Now they might want that because that's what the direction they want to go in, or they say, no, look, this is our line, this is the type of thing that we're going for. I mean, on a technical level, you could say this is, this is the cocktail and musks that we use. We don't do smoky fragrances, we don't do sweet. Everything we like to do is sort of green and dry, whatever it is. Now, some of the perfumers will, think, well, this is not really for me then, because that's not my type of thing. Or some will like step up to the challenge and good at making things that even they don't like. But I do feel like with a lot of perfumers, they do, if they build up a good relationship, or if they have one success or a success with a line, they usually do go back to them because it runs a bit more smoothly. I mean, in a way, it's a good thing because it creates an aesthetic, and I do believe even some designer brands want, like, look, when you smell a Chanel fragrance, it's a Chanel fragrance, or Guerlain, it's a Guerlain. I think every brand kind of wants that, especially designers. They want people to recognize it's our fragrances, and some of them are good at sort of defining that what it is. Some are a bit all over the place for different reasons. But I think the whole in-house perfumer thing is probably going to grow. I think for Dior, like Francis Kurkdjian, for example, I think it kind of reminds me a bit of when John Galliano went to Dior as a designer. Bernard Arnault, he wanted like that sort of star quality to sort of help revive his brand. That's someone that's like just brings like that sort of like celebrity feeling to it. And I think probably when you've seen like Francis Kurkdjian is, he's a big name in the perfume world right now. And most people know, if you, oh, do you know Francis Kurkdjian? They think, oh, is that the guy that has Maison Francis Kurkdjian? Because the brand's named after him.
Yes.
So I think for that reason, it's more of like a style quality thing as well. So again, it just shows you that different brands can have different reasons for having the one perfumer. It's not always going to be consistent.
Yeah.
I feel like they sort of play off each other, because they all sort of react to each other in the sense that there will be a brand that sees you know, Kurjan going to Dior, and they think, oh, what are we going to do? And they would have, you know, that's their reason, or they have a different reason for doing it.
The thing is, right, it kind of gets to what I was saying. In that Dior have gone from someone who had a very strong aesthetic to another perfumer who has a very strong aesthetic that isn't the same as the previous aesthetic.
Yeah.
And the perfumes I've smelled so far that have come out from Coeur de Jean smell very Coeur de Jean-y. You know, you were talking about the cocktail of musks.
Yeah.
It definitely, excuse me, it definitely smells like a Coeur de Jean cocktail in there. It definitely smells like, a Coeur de Jean brew. You know, it smells like a Maison Francis Coeur de Jean perfume, like Dior Riviera. And that, I think that is going to be a problem for Dior. I think it's going to be a problem for Coeur de Jean, because Dior, as big as Coeur de Jean is, Dior is bigger. And stuff's going to end up like where he ends and they begin is going to become blurred. Now, I don't know who's going to do better out of that situation, but
Dior's a funny one. Like for me, historically, when you look at Dior, it's they've always they've been the brand that pulls out surprises.
yeah,
That, you know, that they'll pull out like just a show-stopping perfume or release, usually every 20 something years, and it's a different perfumer with a different style. You know, like
yes,
Dior, Eau Sauvage, Fahrenheit, even
yeah,
like Cork Sauvage, and you know, just in terms of how successful it is, they're all very different perfumes. You,
yes,
if you used to smell them, you would blindly, you wouldn't think, ah, okay, this is all the same house. Dior has always been almost a little bit of a misfit, which kind of
yeah,
has its charm. No,
yes,
why I'm saying this is Francis could be very successful if he pulls out something. I mean, he can do it. I mean, he has made some really good perfumes. Do you know what I mean? Like he can pull out something that is very unexpected. And I think it's not going to be something that smells very Dior. It has to be not Dior. It has to be something completely different that people go, okay, what is this? Because that's historically, I mean, for example, when Dior Homme dropped, people didn't go in there and says, oh, this is a real Dior fragrance. No, it's like, what is this? Fahrenheit the same. Eau Sauvage was the same. So, you know, it kind of has, for me, to be successful, Dior takes something just a bit more crazy and wacky, just a little bit more out there, which is a completely, for me, a different, because for Chanel, it's completely different. You have to make something that is, because the Chanel customer wants something that's Chanel. They definitely know what it is, a Chanel fragrance. And when it smells not Chanel, they're like, no, you know what I mean? I don't want that. I think it's interesting.
I think it's interesting. I think you're right in your analysis of Dior's a bit more eclectic. It's a little bit more wild. It's a little bit more kind of, it's a little bit more kind of like chaotic in that it's never been, I think one of its strengths is that it's not quite as inbred as Chanel is. Chanel's very linear. They keep everything in the family, in house, everything stays the same. You know, there's always like that central theme that runs through Chanel, whereas Dior's like the contraire younger brother sister who has many different kind of facets to its personality, to its aesthetic over the years. Like you say, jumping from Jules in 1980 to Fahrenheit in 85 to then Dior Homme in 2005, 88 Fahrenheit was, sorry, to Dior Homme in 2005, then to Sauvage 10 years later. We're due Dior madness at any moment now, really. But
It's interesting.
whether we'll get one or not, like, it is interesting. It is interesting, but I don't know that. I don't know what they can do to improve that. The late stage Demaché madness that befell Dior, where they started releasing perfume after perfume after perfume that was shit. You know, all those different privés that were just absolute dross. Like, like they're gonna struggle to come back from that. You know, like they released a lot of shit perfume. It's like Guerlain, you know, especially amongst people like us, people who are really into their perfumes and stuff like that. We're always gonna have an asterisk next to the names of houses like that who released countless careless perfumes that felt cheap and nasty, but they had, it feels like they've had like a spasm, you know what I mean, like diarrhea of the perfume release, you know.
It's interesting you said that, because I suppose you can make. I mean, this is just a fun analogy. I mean, don't take this seriously, but I suppose Chanel is like the older child, and Hermes is like the younger child. You know, what I mean, no one really cares, gets away with stuff. You know, Chanel has to be the one that, has to be consistent and keep things together, and a lot of expectation. But then Dior is kind of like the middle child. You know what I mean? It's a bit all over the place, and sometimes a bit lost and crying for attention. But that's the yeah. Look, I think, look, Francis Kurkdjian has made some great perfumes. He is a very good perfumer. If anyone in the world has the ability to make something that is a great Dior fragrance, he can do it. Obviously, we're all waiting. Well, will he do it? Um, you know, who knows? I don't obviously know what the whole motivation behind everything is, whether they want to do that, whether they recognize that. I could be, being too kind or being too naive. I'm aware of that, but the way I see it is, it is possible. But I think I know what would have to be done, and I think Dior is one of the brands that usually the more stop out fragrances for them are usually the men's. I think we've discussed this before. You know, when people, if you say, "Oh, name a great Dior fragrances," most people would roll off one of the men's fragrances, the more, the masculine, homme targeted fragrances. You never know. He might pull out a showstopper for ladies, or who knows.
I think he's going to have to release something in the signature line, to coin a line. He's going to have to release something in like a Sauvage, an Eau Sauvage, a fucking a Homme or something like that. He's going to have to do something along those lines.
I think that's the harder one. I think creating a really great signature fragrance is a really hard thing, and it's only getting harder. I think it's getting harder than compared to making like a niche fragrance or private blend.
Yeah,
I think that's hard.
I agree. Why?
No, because I think on many levels it's difficult, because you have to try and balance, create something interesting, but something that does. I mean, that's the whole point of a signature fragrance. It has to reach more people. Do you know what I mean? It just wouldn't exist if they sold 2 bottles, even if people like us said, "Oh, it's great." That's what the whole, the private lines are for. It's like we can do something that, less people would like. It's hard, and it's very unpredictable how things will, how people will respond to it.
It's I agree with you that I think that the signature line would be more difficult to create for than the private line, simply because the private line has got this kind of it's more forgiving in that it's not like a central release. They don't every time they talk about it, it's like they don't put a celebrity on. They don't like pay for loads of marketing. There's no kind of press release. There's no push. It just sort of comes out and it's on the socials and that's it. Whereas when they release Sauvage, they still have adverts with Johnny Depp on. They still have the whole blue thing going on in the boutique. They're releasing flankers. All that kind of carry on. That requires investment, whereas I don't think that a private blend has that kind of investment, even though the price is higher. You know, I think that they don't have to invest as much time with a private blend. But whereas you'll see adverts on the TV or you'll see adverts on the internet and stuff like that for a new signature fragrance. So I agree with you that it's more important and it's bigger for them when they want to release a signature fragrance. But it's been so long since they started a new line. I mean, Chanel especially. Chanel's the worst. Chanel, I don't know. I mean, I know they're releasing Comet next month. I know somebody told me about Comet and I can't remember who it was. I thought it was Pradi. It might have been Eugene. Was it you that told us? I don't think it was. I think I told you.
Comet.
Somebody told me, I think, in the comments about Comet. But anyway, they've Chanel, and I don't know what's stopping them. They haven't made a new men's release for quite a while. And I'm getting bored with Chanel. I'm sick of waiting. They're very disengaging as a brand. You know, it's easy to walk away from Chanel. It's hard to feel loyalty. But certainly from my point of view, some people may feel differently. But
I think there's many Chanel geeks would wholly disagree with you. They're honestly, they're having sleepless nights over this Comet, I'm sure.
I've heard. Apparently it's a heliotrope perfume. What does heliotrope smell like?
I always describe. I mean, have you smelled heliotrope flowers?
Yes, but I can't remember what they smell like.
Okay, so for me, like the heliotrope is a material. It's kind of like do you know? It's very vanillic. I know that sounds very basic, but as a material, it sort of behaves a bit like a balloon. That it suddenly just adds a lot of space in the fragrance. You can notice, like you could have a really dense sort of floral composition with jasmine, rose, and iris. You put a bit of heliotrope in there, and everything just suddenly feels very airy. It's weird.
Okay.
It just adds a lot of space to things. And actually, if you put too much heliotrope, it kind of makes everything sort of almost disappear. It's almost it can behave like some sort of invisibility jacket that shrouds over everything. Someone said almondy. Yes, some people get like a coumarin tonka bean thing from it as well. Usually heliotrope is paired with things like coumarin and bitter almond and cherry, that type of thing. But as a material, I mean, it's very hard to get as a material unless you have like certain licenses to import into your country, because it is, many people know this, it's a precursor to MDMA. So it's regulated, the actual, the material, the oil. So that there's a lot of replaces out there. So there's like there's a really good feminist one called Heliotropics N, which I like using. I use it sometimes. It's a nice material. It's not far off the real thing. Actually, to be honest with you, I feel there's a lot of perfumers out there who don't create necessarily a lot of perfumes or compositions, but they create a lot of bases, which is really hard work because you have to really work to make something smell the same. And I'd say like the person who made the Oris Jivko base could be one of the most beloved perfumers in the world, because a lot of the perfumes that we love with iris in it, a lot of it's Oris Jivko. I was saying that to you. And that smell that you associate with iris, and I associate with iris, and most people, is actually the smell that that person's formula, I don't know how many years ago, had created. So like it's like a piece of them is in many creations. You know, they have their toes dipped everywhere.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I started off with heliotrope and then somewhere else. But yeah, heliotrope is, just think of like a vanillic balloon.
A vanillic balloon.
It's like a
That is
balloon.
the name of my experimental EP.
Vanillic balloon.
Vanillic balloon. That is how did you know this? That is the release, my next musical release. Vanillic balloon. We could start a band if you wanted. The heliotrope, is it better in a perfume rather than it being the perfume? You know, I think Chamad Pour On was a heliotrope male fragrance, and I was not a fan.
Yeah.
Let me check.
The thing is, heliotrope. It's do you know you could add 0 vanilla to a fragrance.
Hyacinth, I'm thinking of. Sorry.
You could add 0 vanilla to a fragrance, and you can put a bit of heliotrope in, and you'd be deceived to think it's got vanilla in it, if that makes sense. But it's like it's kind of a bit like Alien. Do you know, like if an alien came down and looked like a human, you might look, there's something a bit off. What do they call it? What's that curve that you go through, like for like robots that look? What do they call it? The pit. Someone in the what do you call it? Comments remember. But it's something just a little bit off that's not vanillic, and that's usually heliotrope. It's in things like Le Bleu, that gives that sort of very vanillic background. The thing is, when you, as I said, you can have it by itself as just a sole sort of note in the heart of a fragrance. But for me, it would always feel a teeny bit hollow. Or you could mix it with other things, but it really does change how the other notes, especially floral notes, behave and how you receive them and how you smell them.
Okay.
I would be interested because if this Comet is a heliotrope, then being a Chanel fragrance, we know that that there's to be a Chanel fragrance, unless it doesn't smell like a Chanel fragrance, but to be a Chanel, it has to have aldehydes, even if it's a small amount. Aldehydes are there. It's going to have to have that sort of ylang jasmine thing, at least a little bit, and it'd be interesting to see how that sort of airy vanillic thing plays off against that sort of soapy floral thing that you get in, that dryness that you get in a Chanel fragrance. I actually think if it is a heliotrope, I would be really interested to smell it. I think it could really have a unique smell, possibly. I think it's unusual that Chanel are tackling a sort of. I think there might be a little bit of heliotrope in what's the fragrance? Cuir de Russie.
What was that? Heliotrope and Cuir de Russie?
I think there might be a little bit, yes. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
Are you talking about the modern EDP?
Modern.
Are you talking about the one you smelled in the shops?
Could be, but I'm more tempted to think that even the original formula. Oh,
Okay.
Eugen's from. Okay, we have Mr. Chanel himself, Eugen. Boy has heliotrope. Well, there you go.
Boy has heliotrope. So I'm smelling this vintage Quai de Russie, and it's definitely got a vanillic powdery kind of vibe going on, which is in there. Let me smell you. But it's also got like this filth. I think you could be right from what you're describing heliotrope as. I think you could be right. You know, like this kind of vanillic, irisy, floral, airy, hot kind of thing.
Yes, it creates space.
It creates space between notes.
Yes, especially the floral notes. For me, mostly.
Okay. So it could just be opening up the mid of the perfume and making it more accessible, rather than being like a fat, dense kind of thing.
Yes.
In the mid.
Yes.
I will send you some of my vintage Quai de Russie, and you will smell it, and you will tell me what you think.
It could be very hard. I mean, if smelling, I mean, there could be heliotrope in hundreds of fragrances, and you wouldn't realize because it's in such small amounts, doing certain things. And the thing is, like trying to pick out notes in perfumes, it's not easy. I have an anecdote. Right. I have an anecdote. I had a fragrance I showed to a perfumer.
Which one?
A very good one. I won't say. No, I can't do that. But very kindly talked about it. But they were saying, "Is this in there? And this isn't there. It smells like this." And I was like, "No, no, no." And I've done that. You say, "Oh, was that in there?" And it's not that you're wrong. Even as a perfumer, you're not a GCMS. You're not going to pick out every note that's in the fragrance. And sometimes you can be deceived. Like if you put a lot of rose oil and some, peach lactone, it might smell a bit like Divana. And you think, "Oh, is that Divana?" But no, it's just two notes playing off each other. It might smell a bit like that, if that makes sense. So it's hard to pick out all the notes, and for me, it can be sometimes a bit of a. I mean, I know you get note listings which are there to sort of help, usually, so people understand what they're kind of smelling. But obviously, that doesn't give you the full picture. I mean, there's some materials that might stick out for a perfumer because it's really apparent. Like, oh, okay, I know I can smell that.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you can be wrong, and that's okay. I mean, you're not. I always say like you can be objectively wrong, but subjectively not, because like you say, oh, is it orange in that? No, it's bergamot and a bit of, I don't know, ethyl maltol, and it smells like a more sweeter bergamot, which is kind of like an orange. So objectively, yeah, you're wrong. There's no orange in it, but subjectively, it does kind of smell like an orange.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of perfumery is, creating fantasy notes and like, what do you call it? I'd love to figure out how Interlude Woman creates that kiwi note. It's driving me crazy. But it's most likely just a couple of simple ingredients put a certain dosage that sort of create that this sort of fantasy kiwi note that comes out. But unless you had a GCMS and actually went through the formula, and that wouldn't even give you the full picture. You'd have to do like hundreds of trial and errors and still hope that you'd figure out how it works.
No, I get what you're saying. Because there's so many different routes to take to get to the same place that it's hard to figure out which one that was the road that actually got traveled. Like there's like 100 different ways to create like a vanilla amber accord. You know what I mean? You can do it with a drop more or a drop less, or you use an entirely different fucking material. That there's like a multitude of interesting, different pathways to go down. The one you end up going down, though, is only one of them. So when somebody says, "Did you go this way to get to this perfume?" you say, "No, I took a slightly different way." You know, like they are objectively wrong, but you still got to the same place. You know what I mean? So it's like you are excuse me, you have many options in perfumery, don't you? It's
Yeah.
like a it's like a very easy it's like a very easy mistake to make, to smell a perfume and think, "Oh, is this in here? Is that in here?" And it's not, you know?
I mean, it's fun. It's fun to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, as long as you don't take it too seriously, yourself too seriously. Do you know what I mean? It's I mean, obviously, like, of course, there's there's a different layer to this. Like, if you're on a channel and saying this doesn't contain oud, and the company behind that fragrance is not happy with you. But like with us, like, yeah, if you said, "Oh, I think that's got like, is that an oudi note?" or I smell I don't know, it smells like croissants. You know, it's fun, and I think, you know, when you're nerding out about things, that's what you like to do. I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. You know, it's fun. It's just you have to take everything with a pinch of salt. You know.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree. You can't just like hang your hat the first time you hear somebody say something and be like, "Ah, that's exactly what it is, and that's all that it is, and that's all it can be." You know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people who tell other people not to do that themselves. Um, I think that I think that with it being, I mean, that's what people say. They think it's like an art form. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And with it being, I mean, if you accept that it's an art form, right, then you have to accept that people are going to look at the same thing and get entirely different, like, perceptions of it. You
Yeah.
know, how two people can look at the same thing and both be wrong about it or both be right about it, but say completely opposite things. It's very, very interesting, you
Yeah.
know, and it does kind of make you think that that perfume is an art form because it ticks a lot of those kind of boxes. It's just that it's just that a lot of people who you share the space with don't necessarily want it to be so. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, but it's like anything. You get into anything seriously, you're gonna find, especially when people start geeking out about things, you're gonna get into some, you know, silly wars, as I call them. You know.
yeah, no, you're right about that. We all get
Um,
into stuff like that when it's
that's why, like, for me, one of the greatest things in perfumery, I think this is French perfumery, and it's the reason why we like French, was the creation of the chypre structure. I told you I was going to talk about it
yes, you
because
did.
for me, the chypre structure is, it's almost like a technology that works. It's like the discovery of you know, gravitational mechanics by Einstein. It's around the same time as well. It is like the ultimate perfume structure that you can just, it's like a formula that you can change about, put things in, you get this really beautiful, complex thing that works, if that makes sense. Um, like you think how many fragrances are in the chypre genre. Some of them don't even smell the same, but it's, you know, it's the same thing. Um, I like, for me, it's probably one of the single greatest inventions in perfumery.
What
Um,
else would you put up there? We'll go back to sheepra in a second, but what else would you put up as greatest inventions in perfumery? That sounds like a wide scope, you know?
Obviously synthetics.
Yes.
Sorry. Well, not just that. I mean, the discovery by the Robert family looking at essential oil extractions in the late 19th century, for like, you know, finding the actual process of creating essential oils and absolutes, because everything before there was tinctures and enfleurages, and you know what I mean. It's sort of, and then synthetics came around. It was like an explosion. You have all this stuff to play with, um, and then the structure was made there. And for me, like the cheaper structure gave you all, okay, this is, you know, we can structure perfumes. Chanel #5, I still think, is one of the greatest things to be made in the 20th century, simply because it was kind of the first. Well, I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm pushing myself saying the first, but really, I feel that was the really first big abstract perfume. Because I know to us, aldehydic notes are very commonplace, and we smell them everywhere in soaps and detergents, and everyone smelled, you know, Chanel #5 or some aldehydic perfume on someone. But at the time, it was kind of revolutionary. Yeah, there was other things like arpège and Calca-Fleurs, which had some aldehydes before it, but nothing that went like crazy like that. You know, it was kind of like people smelling something new. It was like seeing a new color. Do you know what I mean? That was, I think, a great invention of like the perfumes can be abstract, and I think that almost pushed it into an art form.
Yeah, it's the you want to talk about inventions in perfume. The amber accord, I would go. I would say the amber accord. I mean, I've been loving the ambers recently, but that labdanum, vanilla, benzoin, resinous, myrrh, balsam kind of thing. You know that that kind of thing's one of like my favorite. Leather, you know, like a leather accord, leather notes. Chypre is probably more. I would agree with you. I mean, I'm not a big Chypre fan, but Chypre, with it being like, with it being shown that you can have lots and lots and lots of different kinds, or lots and lots and lots of different Chypres while it's still maintaining the same structure, kind of indicated what perfume was capable of and what perfumers were capable of, you know.
Yeah,
And I think for that sort of reason, I would agree with you that like Chypres are extremely important in the history of perfume. Those big grand dame kind of Chypres that we get kind of um, that we get not thrust upon us, but we get shown to be important and relevant and stuff like that. They're not for me, you know, those old like grandma type perfumes. They're not my kind of thing.
mm,
But I do appreciate them for what they are. You know what I mean? You can't deny the historical significance.
yeah. No, I mean, as I said, like I think the biggest thing, well, there would be no amber accord necessarily historically if there was no vanillin,
Yes.
which was discovered what by Hermann and Reimer in like 1870 or 60 something. I can't remember. Um, so it's actually, you know, the invention. Or, to be honest with you, even though chemists, many chemists, I mean, some perfumers are chemists, but you know, that sort of explosion of like the industrial revolution that brought a lot of chemistry, industrial chemistry, we kind of have to thank them a lot, because they really did sort of provide. I suppose painters, you know, anyone who's in art feel the same when, you know, certain pigments were, you know, made a lot more affordable that we could use, and, you know, you can paint. Um, I think for perfumers it's the same thing, and yeah, I mean, I was for example, you know, Le Parfum de Thérèse.
Yes. Yes. The mall. Yes, of course. Edmund Rudnitzer.
Yeah, that fragrance, I do feel was definitely ahead of its time. It contained cologne, and it was
Yes.
made. It was originally made in what 19. I'm tempted to say it's something 50 something, 55, that he had made it for his wife. I mean, Callum wasn't being seen like we associate Callum with the 90s. So the like the thing, what I'm trying to get at is, I think when it comes to for perfumers really to create something artistic, and you look at one of the greatest, or probably the greatest perfumer technically, Edmund Renitska. I think even he's seen that there's, if a new ingredient comes on, what could you do with it? Could you create something new, a new smell, a new feeling? Um, so that's why I'm not like, I know some people give synthetics a bad name, or even certain naturals. If a new certain natural, like people went crazy for, what was it, mate, the tea note. There was like absolutes flying around. People went crazy using it in all these perfumes. Um, I think the greatest invention in perfumery is usually it's the materials that drive it. And every now and again, you get a great perfumer who's a genius that pulls things together and creates a new structure, and everyone sees, okay, that works, and people copy it.
Got you. It it it's. I mean, when you say Rudnitsky is the greatest perfume ever, are you talking about his influence, or are you talking about his actual perfumes?
Well, both. I think he's made some great perfumes. He's only signed what 17. His influence as well. He is someone that I think every perfumer you'll ever talk to holds in great reverence. Um, his perfumes are still studied today, um, because he's one of those people. You know how I was saying, like, when perfumers, you could smell in each other's work, and you're like, oh, is this, is this? He was great at having very simple formulas that smell so much more complex than they are, that you think he's added this extra and this extra and this extra. Um, he was just a very clever man. And you have to look at all the people that he had taught, um, mainly being Pierre Bourdon, Jean-Claude Elena, and in a way, by proxy, all the people they taught as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Because they sort of passed that on, that sort of knowledge.
yeah.
Although
It's
I'd say the most influential perfumer in terms of teaching is Jean Carles. He was the one that started the Raw School, that big school that is now the Givaudan Perfumery School. That like Antoine Lee went to, Pierre Baudin, Jean-Claude Elena. He created the whole method of actually smelling the raw materials and creating your own descriptions, and that sort of creating an olfactive memory, like a library in your mind. Because he was, he's almost like a lot of people compare him with Beethoven, because he apparently went nose blind in his later years, but still composed some great perfumes, even though he couldn't smell anything. It's because in his head, he had, I don't know how much. I'm tempted to believe it, because many people still talk about the story, and he was, couldn't smell the fragrances, but was composing because he had created that olfactory library in his head, and he knew how things would combine and smell. Um, and I think that's what most perfume schools, especially like the Givaudan school, would push students to sort of try and achieve. That actually you're creating in your mind. I mean, you even if your nose stopped working, you could still create, which I think is a beautiful thing. I think it's crazy as well. It's just
Yeah.
like,
If you think about it, everything that you experience is created in your head, isn't it? You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And
Sorry, go on.
sorry, Frank is correct as well there. Runitska also made bases, yes, and that's what I'm saying about bases, creating bases. I think that's an unsung job amongst perfumers, um, because there's a lot of fragrances that you would smell that Runitska's not the perfumer, but the base used in it would be key to that fragrance. So there's a piece of him, and when you smell it and you go, oh, that lovely honey note. It's Runitska made that honey base, for example. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. It's remarkable the kind of. Do you think he had an easier job than today's perfumers, though, because nobody had ever done what he did before? So he had this huge, because perfume was a lot smaller. It was a much smaller world, and he had a lot more room to spread his wings than perfumers do now. It's a much more competitive field. It's much harder to do something for the first time. He worked under different circumstances where he was in charge. He famously went down to the tax office in his local town and convinced them that he didn't need to pay taxes because of who he was. You wouldn't get a perfumer do that these days because everything's being locked down a lot tighter. All these kind of loopholes and all these kinds of pathways have already been taken. So doing something original and for the first time is a lot harder than it used to be. It's a very similar problem to something that's like in science and physics. We don't make any great leap forward. We don't make any great leaps forward anymore because all the great leaps forwards have been taken.
Yeah.
So do you think it's hard? Do you think it's harder to be a perfumer now than it was in his day, or do you think it's easier?
Yes and no for many different reasons. I suppose how a perfumer would look to Rudnitska is how a scientist probably looks towards like Isaac Newton. Yeah, I mean, if you brought Isaac Newton into today's time and sat him down and made him do a test on quantum mechanics, he'd probably fail because he hadn't learned it. It's completely different. It's moved on and it's suddenly got more complicated. But it doesn't mean he's stupid. Doesn't mean he couldn't do it. It's just how things evolve. There's a certain level of respect you have for someone who's pioneered or created. As I say, you stand on the shoulders of giants. And the reason why a perfumer can sit here and do all this interesting, complicated things that we want to do is because people like Rudnitska, carved out that path. I wouldn't say it was easy. I mean, it's just challenging in a different way. And in a way, I think it does make him very special because I think really to start something really takes some sort of genius. They say like to be a genius, you sort of have to sort of hit a bullseye no one else can see, and he did that. And you may have perfumers maybe technically who are very good today, and you could say actually made some better things than Runitska, more complicated, more But I wouldn't compare them. I don't think it's fair to, and I wouldn't say being a perfumer is easier or harder today. I think it just presents this different challenge. It's more competitive, I'd say, even though it was competitive back then. Um, uh, but at the same time, yeah, it's hard to say. I don't think I could give any further insight into that personally, but I would tend to look at someone like Renitska as like a Newton, just a great genius. And without him, a lot of what we know about perfumery today probably wouldn't exist. Or, maybe it would be someone else who did his, what he took his place and did the same thing. Who knows?
Yeah. Do you think then? So you kind of hit on a point I was gonna talk about there. In that, if it wasn't him, would it just be somebody else? Or is it just that there was cometh the hour, cometh the man? You know what I mean? Like he was the right person at the right time, in the right place with the right stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the zip of destiny. It's like Is it destiny or is it luck or is it a bit of both? It's weird. Who knows? We look at everything in backwards, in retrospect. You know what I mean? It's thank God it did happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say he's not like the only sole person. I mean, there is like a Mount Rushmore of famous perfumers.
Ooh, ooh. Go on, I like that.
Should we ask everyone in the comments who their Mount Rushmore? You have to pick 4. Come on, there's only 4
Yes,
heads.
we should do that, but I want to hear yours first.
Okay, it'd be Brunitska, Ernest Bow. I'd be tempted to add Coty, if even though he's not 100% a perfumer.
The heck you say?
Well, he did get some help from some people in houses. Like a lot of the bases were made. All right, I'll just put Coty as for creative vision, but I'm not going as far as Roger. I love Jacques Guerlain, but then my favorite perfumer is Guy Robert. But
you can only have 4, so you've got so far, right? You can only have 4, so far you have got Rudnitska. Who else?
Okay. I have a subjective list in my mind, but I'll try and be as objective as I can, which is kind of impossible. But I would say Rudnitska, Ernest Bow, Coty, and I actually agree with Duncan. Dominique Ropion. He technically one of the greatest perfumers we've probably seen in the last 50 years.
Outrageous behavior.
I like Frank's list. Roger Dove, Irwin Creed, Roger Dove, and Olivia Creed. We've got the 2 sides of Roger.
We've got the 2 sides. There are certainly 2 faces to Roger, aren't there?
Yeah. No, but I would say on that list, like if you used to look at the perfumes and the influences they had on other perfumers I think it's. I would hazard get it. I mean, like Jacques Polge, who I love, who's great, who could easily be on there. I wish I had like 10, but you can only have 4.
You can only have 4. So, give me is that your objective or subjective list?
Objective.
Right, do your subjective list.
Jacques Guerlain, Guy Robert, Ernest Beau, and Jacques Polge.
Outrageous. What would I do? Subjective. No, objective.
Oh, Jean-Claude Eleanor, I forgot about him. How could I forget? Well, he could be on my objective and subjective.
But that's 5.
I know, but he's not going to make the 4. But he's close.
Okay. In case one of them gets exposed for having committed crimes of a certain nature in future, we can re-chisel their face into Jean-Claude Eleanor.
Yes.
Okay. So, who do I go with objectively? So I'm going to try and go throughout time, right? I'm going to try and go throughout time. Oh God, it's really hard. Oh, fucking hell. Probably Coty. I'd probably go with Coty because a lot of modern perfume is based on what he has done and said. Second, I would probably go with Jean Paul Guerlain.
Jean Paul.
The second half of the 21st century, the 20th century. Do you know what it is? I want to take that back. I would go with Coty. I would go with Edmund Rudnitska.
Okay.
Right. I would go with. Oh, who did Habit Rouge and Vetiver?
That's Jean Paul Guerlain. So
Yeah, Jean.
Yeah.
I would go with Jean Paul Guerlain as well.
Okay.
Right. And then, honestly, right, I swear to God.
Is this your objective list?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alberto Marias.
Okay, I'm judging you.
I feel the judgment. I feel the judgment, but objectively, right? Objectively,
yeah,
he is the single most influential perfumer of the last 30 years.
Do you think so?
It's between him or Bourdon. It's between him or Bourdon, and I just think because of something like Acqua di Gio, right? And all the other fucking mental perfumes that he's made that have been absolutely massive and influenced all the other perfumes that have come after since. I mean, forget all the shit he's made. Just look at the highlights. He's definitely a working girl. He definitely make a perfume for anybody if they slipped him enough money.
I mean, you could argue that Olivier Cresp could be just as influential.
You could. Do you know what it is? I thought about Olivier Cresp. His name did go through my mind.
Just one fragrance. Well, actually, two. I mean, there's Light Blue, but I don't know if that was kind of as influential as. But yeah, just you think Angel.
Angel and Alien, yeah, exactly. Created a new genre of perfume.
Yeah, and I gave Ernest Beau almost that honor on the objective list for creating Chanel No. 5. And
yeah,
I could, for the same reasons, give Olivier Cresp, if I do it logically, a position on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's hard. The thing is with Alberto Marias is that it's not life-changing perfume, but it's not like what I want to be. So I don't want to associate myself with Alberto Marias's creations because of all the shit that he's made. But if you look through his resume, some of the perfumes he's made have completely and utterly changed perfume. Utterly.
Yeah, but
like as much as any Guerlain, right? Like Acqua di Gio, right? Like people who weren't there at the time won't understand, right? Acqua di Gio was like there was a before and an after Acqua di Gio as far as male perfume was concerned.
Okay.
You know, it was right up there with the Calvin Kleins. Like, I mean, I say it was up there with the Calvin Kleins. It blew away the Calvin Kleins. You know what I mean? The Calvin Kleins were flashes in the pan. Acqua di Gio still sells.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy. Like, if you want to base it on like a single thing, do you know what it is? I would, if I was going for influence and stuff like that, I would probably go with Bourdon because of all the influence he's had on people who created Aventus, and he created Job Homme, and he created fucking Cool Water, which was the Acqua di Gio of its day, you know. But it's like, I mean, Brian's made the point about Demaché with Sauvage. You know, that you could say that. I would probably, if I'm being honest, I would probably spring for Bourdon, but I think Alberto Marias deserves a mention, because as much as we're pillory him, and I do pillory him, he is a fucking, I do, excuse me, I do kind of give him stick because he's created loads of dross.
So, but the thing is, like, you know, we're talking about this being our objective list. I see a lot of people talking about influence.
Yeah.
Do you think influence is the only parameter?
No, but it's a major one, because you realize when you influence your peers like that, like when you influence the market, when you influence your peers, when you change the weather, or you make the weather. You know, that's the phrase they use in political circles. You make the weather. When you are that powerful, you know, when the results are so profound that you change an entire industry, you have to take that into account.
Yeah,
it's
interesting, because I'm noticing, even when we try and be objective, how we perceive like that Mount Rushmore is slightly different, if that makes sense. Like I get it from like a fan's point of view, especially like the influence would have a big thing in, because you see it on the market and what you smelled and how people react to it. But if you was to ask like a perfumer what their list is, it'd probably be completely different to ours. If that
Yes.
makes sense. Because they would view it in an almost probably more technical way. But how the hell did they create these 4 fragrances? And they must be, they're geniuses. But they might, we might think they're, you know what I mean?
I am going to go to the bathroom to dehydrate. So keep everybody entertained, Jura Rose. I'll be back in a minute, and I will give you my subjective list. Don't run away. Jura Rose won't hurt you.
Okay, I hope I don't hear a drum roll.
You shan't.
Yeah. I have to justify my pick of Dominique Roupion. It was someone in the comments that mentioned him, and it just clicked, and I thought, yes, he is a great perfumer. Really, 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 I think someone that is I'd say most perfumers hold in a lot of awe. Yes, my favorite, I mean, like, very subjectively, like, I love their style. Yeah, it's very sort of cold, soapy, stiff upper lip perfumery, but I do like Guy Robert. Lock Rich out. I'll blow out his candle. I can't breathe strong enough. Yes, I love Guy Robert. Everyone knows how much I love Equipage. Gucci Palm, Kalesh, Gold. The only Guy Robert fragrance I haven't tried is Doubly, and I'd love to smell it, but it's a real unicorn. Am I just saying unicorn because Brian keeps mentioning ATH? This is sorcery. I'm thinking of unicorns. I don't like this. Dominique Roupion is he's very methodical, and he's known to be. He like the people throw around, I'm a perfectionist, I'm a perfectionist. And I would really say watch Dominic Rubion work and then see if you would call yourself perfectionist. Because I thought I was, but I don't think I'm anywhere near that. That man, he's amazing. A lot of patience. Yeah, but everyone makes underwhelming stuff. I love Rodriguez Flores Rue, but there's some things he makes that is underwhelming when you make so much. And the one thing you can't say about Dominic Robion's work usually is technically, at least they smell very finished.
Do you mean finished as in the shite, or do you mean finished as in
Finished,
they
just
feel
like even if it's crap, it's still a very well made perfume.
All right, I've got you. Okay. I need to do my subjective list. My subjective list of influential perfumers. Well, no, Mount Rushmore. What qualifies someone to be on Mount Rushmore? Does anybody know?
What?
What qualifies somebody to get onto Mount Rushmore? What was the point of Mount Rushmore?
I don't know.
So if I was going to go,
Actually, I did know that. I did know that. I remember reading about that years and years and years ago, but I cannot remember. But that's useless because if I don't know it now, someone in the chat will know.
How do you get onto Mount Rushmore? Mount Rushmore. Oh, right. So I would probably go with Rudnitska. I would probably then go with Bourdon. So this is is this a personal Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, like your favorites.
Oh, my favorites. That's different.
Oh. Well, that's what a subjective is, isn't it? It's kind of you just sort of giving into what you like.
Okay,
like you've done your objective list.
Okay. Let me give my subjective list. I would go with Jean Curlieu from Jean Patou.
Oh, okay.
I would go with Christopher Sheldrake.
That's a surprise. Come on.
That's an easy one. Yes, that's an easy one. I would go with who was the guy? Who was the fucking guy who did? Oh, he did the L'Artisan and the Maître Parfumeur de Gantiers. What was his bloody name?
Not Duchefort, is it?
No, he's dead now.
Oh, he's dead. Oh, is it that one who had that Spanish brand?
No. He did the original. He founded L'Artisan Parfumier.
Is it a Jean Paul?
Pass. Hello, the L'Artisan. It's not Giacobetti, although Giacobetti's quite good. Where are they? Get really
People are
old
saying
one.
Laporte.
Yes, Laporte. I would probably. I mean, Laporte was really good, but do I actually want him as on my Mount Rushmore? I don't know. It was Laporte. You're right, friends. It is, but I've thought about it there, and I'm not sure he gets onto it because he didn't make that many perfumes. Gerard Anthony.
Okay.
Gerard Anthony.
Okay.
So I would have Pierre Baudin, Christopher Sheldrake, Gerard Anthony, and Antoine Lee. And I'll tell you why. Because I think he's the best perfumer who's at it today.
He's good.
I think he's the best perfumer in work today. You know? Like, nobody else is making stuff like what he makes. You know what I mean? Like, nobody else is making stuff that smells that good these days. Everything's kind of like that said. I've smelled a couple of the more modern stuff that he's made. I smelled the stuff he made for Hubigant last year, and I wasn't a fan. I don't know if you've smelled them. They weren't great. So, but I mean, you can only. Sorry.
I'd know. Maybe some other people feel different, but I think everyone is very few. I don't think there's any perfumers ever not made something that's maybe underwhelming. But like a lot of these perfumers, like Anton Lee, they can make something, even though it might be a bit boring or underwhelming to you. They're technically good perfumers, and at least they create finished fragrances. But every now and again, they make a really great fragrance, and that ability to do that alone, you know what I mean? You have to have a lot of respect for that. And sometimes it's not their fault, it's the brands they're working with. You never know. The fragrance that Anthony could have made something from Hubignon, it's amazing, but it just got rejected. They didn't want that. You know what I mean? It's partially out of their power. It's what they create, but also what the brands are willing to release.
No, you're right. He works for Les and Demodable, and he's almost like a creative, like he's part of the creative team there. Whereas in other places he's literally just like the engineer. He's the guy who fucking actually makes what the other people want him to make.
He's a true creator. Like, you can tell he's very creative. He wants to. There's that energy that he wants to really create things.
Yes. And he wants, excuse me, he wants to use good materials. He wants to impress. He wants to impress himself upon the perfume. He wants it. How we were talking earlier about people having styles and people having like an aesthetic. Like, he wants there to be I don't know that he wants there to be, but he is creating an Antoine Lee aesthetic. I can smell an Antoine Lee. I'm wearing Patchouli Noisette today. And as dark and as different from the other Les Indemodables it's not that it's compared to, but that it's like from the same line. You can still smell it's him. Like, you can smell that personality come through. You can smell the technique. You can smell the kind of like his, like when you look at certain artists' work, like Rembrandt, you can tell a Rembrandt when you fucking enter the room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of like that with certain perfumes. You used to be able to do that with Tom Ford perfumes. You could have smelled the Tom Ford perfume a mile away. You know what I mean? Like, as an aesthetic, fuck me, as an aesthetic. But they're very much bastardized and moved away from that aesthetic.
Yeah.
Which, for better or for worse, they've done. But Antoine Lee, like, for me, feels like he's creating an aesthetic for himself at Les Indemodables and the other brands he's working for.
Yeah.
Where you can tell it's him.
Yeah.
I think he's the best active perfumer in the world today. If somebody else can point us in the direction of someone who's doing better stuff, I would fucking love to smell it.
Did you like, you mentioned Tom Ford, did you like the new vanillas?
Oh God. I've got a sample of Vanilla Sex. I need to do a first impressions on it. I thought it was all right. And I wore it as a sample on my hand that day, and I've worn it again as a sample on my hand. And the more I wear it and smell it, the less impressed I get by it, which is kind of the trick that designer houses use, isn't it? You know, like when you first smell it, you get this big sugar rush, and you're like, "Oh, everything's amazing."
Yeah.
And then after a while, it becomes more vacuous, more vapid, more empty, more hollow, slightly sad, slightly empty. What did you think of them?
The Vanilla Sex, it didn't bore me over at all. Yeah, I just got that benzaldehyde cherry almond thing, and then the vanilla. I think it does contain a teeny bit of raw vanilla absolute, hence the price. But I mean, that's just, for me. I don't know if it was actually like, wow, okay, is it really doing anything for me? No. Do you know what I mean? I didn't find it terribly exciting. It's not like a bad perfume, but it's, yeah, I wasn't.
Mediocre.
Yeah, I mean, what's the other one? Vanille Fatale. That's, it's a little bit more unusual and strange, and it changes in the. But I know that was like a re-release. I never smelled the original Vanille Fatale, so I don't know if it's, people might say the original's better, or they might even prefer the new one. I don't know. I found, in terms of actually interesting level, I found the Vanille Fatale a little bit more interesting, but I still didn't love it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It is kind of mediocre. It is kind of a bit naff and a bit Tom Ford light. You know, it's a bit like the old stuff. Like, if you'll excuse as well, I fucking melt my fingers. I'm sure that removed me fucking fingerprints a minute ago. You smell stuff like Tuscan Leather, Amber Absolute, Tobacco Oud. That's the Tom Ford aesthetic to me. Big,
Yeah,
bold, dark,
monolithic.
monolithic, towering, like kind of powerful, strong. Not just like projecting and like performance wise, but like bold fragrances and confident fragrances. They've turned into these silly little girl perfumes, you know, with their silly like 12-year-old girl names. You know what I mean? Stuff like fucking like bitter peach and fucking rose prick, and like it's juvenile. You know, it's silly and sad and it's silly and sad and a bit naff, you know. And once you've lost that kind of foothold in the aesthetic that you had, then you're not getting it back, because people are going to be like, yeah, remember when you started acting like a fucking child? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, the Tom Fords. I mean, for the time, they that sort of that monolithic feeling to them was interesting, and I understand why they caught people's attention, because they were like big overdoses of like two or three materials that made it. And I'm not in a stupid way or a lazy way. It was done very purposefully, and there was thought behind it, and it wasn't, there was a sense of art behind it, but it was something that created, or really sort of would I like to say push new boundaries in niche perfume? I could say that, yeah. But I know what you mean. They sort of fizzled out. It's almost like they're running out of ideas, but they're under a lot of pressure, which probably is the case.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I
And
imagine they're under a lot of pressure, these big houses, to keep churning out heavy hitters. And that's why they're going down the data analysis route. You know, focus groups, fucking what AI, what materials have worked before, what materials will work in future, science, data, all that kind of thing. Kind of like the antithesis of art, you know, which is why they're creating stuff that's pretty fucking boring. Which is strange. Jura Rose, let me ask you, do you use Basenotes?
I've used Basenotes loads of times. I've always found Basenotes interesting.
Okay.
I actually think the perfume thing there, the threads, how people talk, even people's discussion on materials have always been very interesting. It's very old though. Like I feel like Basenotes it was definitely used a lot more 10 years ago, for example. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I just feel like a lot of the energy that was focused on Basenotes has sort of moved to other platforms like Instagram, or the people using Instagram and that might have not really engaged that much in Basenotes, for
Yeah.
example. I don't know, but I heard all about it, how it's kind of, it's desperate. It's in a desperate
Yeah.
state, and it's
Yeah.
sad because I do think it has a lot to give, and there's been a lot of effort being put into it historically.
Yeah.
And I still think it has a lot to give. I think there's a lot of like especially like amateur perfumers or people who want to get into things, and it was a great place where people can just talk and discuss and share. You
Yeah.
know, not so much anymore.
Like a town square kind of thing where people could meet and discuss ideas, like a cafe,
Yeah,
you know, where
and there would
people
always
could just
be someone, because there was some real legit perfumers who used to talk in there, and they used to give advice to some people. Um, yes, I'm a psychiatrist perfumer. He will cure your addictions. I've been
he
trying
will
to
give you
cure Rich
addictions.
with his water addiction, but
Yes.
I'm no good at it. Trust me.
It's he has tried to cure me of my water habit many times. It is not easy. I just don't want to quit. That's why I'm I'm a hopeless addict.
You
But
haven't even acknowledged the issue, Rich. We haven't even got to the first step.
that's right. I don't have a problem. Everybody else has got a problem. It's because they can't get water, because I've got all of it. I've got hold on a second. That's 8. I've got 45 litres of water in front of it in 5-litre bottles. So I've got 9 5-litre bottles. Yeah,
Yeah.
that should keep us going until Saturday.
I thought you said tonight.
Well, nearly. I mean, I intend to hit the water hard as we head through the midnight hours. The thing with Basenotes, I think my kind of opinion on, because for people who don't know the context, the guy who runs Basenotes is a guy from Britain. He is called Grant, and he set the website up 25 years ago, 1999, and he has basically been running it himself ever since. And he set it up. I think it was the first perfume-based website on the internet. It's older than Fragrantica, isn't it? It's certainly older than Parfumo.
Yeah.
And they've been going for 25 years, and he has always ran it by himself. He's had, there are a lot of people who are on there. There are a lot of people who are on there who have been on there for 20 years, 25 years. for a long time. It's where a lot of people found out that other people cared about perfume as much as they did for the first time. It has a unique and it has a unique and original place in fragrance lore, as in LORE, in that it is truly the originator of internet-based perfume discussion and content, really. But it's become extremely hard, it seems, from the outside for the guy to keep up in the modern world doing it by himself. And the website is failing on a technical level and on a commercial level. A lot of people report problems using it. Last year it had to get taken down because there was a huge problem, and I think Grant tried to fix the problems by himself and he couldn't. And basically what he said was he was going to have to, this has been his full-time job for a while, running Basenotes, and he's not even getting a wage from it anymore. He can't take money from the website because he can barely keep the servers open because of how much it costs. A lot of people took this as Grant was going to leave the website to just go out to just run until it stopped working. I was speaking to a couple of people, and a couple of people got in touch with Grant to ask him if he was selling the website, to which he responded strongly that he was not. My own personal opinion on it is 25 years is a long time. 25 years on the internet is a hell of a run. It's an incredible run. Most websites of any kind after 25 years, unless they're a behemoth like Wikipedia or Google or fucking YouTube or eBay, that kind of thing, most of them have failed by now. And it's hard because if you can't keep up with the times and change, the internet will leave you behind. It's completely remorseless. The internet's the most competitive place thing on the internet, in the world, like in the history of the world. Never have you had such a place that competes for your attention like the internet does. And it kind of feels like Basenotes has been left behind by, as Jura said, Instagram, by YouTube to a lesser extent, Fragrantica, unfortunately, and Perfumer. And I kind of feel like Grant, and I don't know Grant at all, and I'm not a big Basenotes user. It feels like he would rather the website went down with him at the helm than it stay up without him at the helm. And he's refusing help on any other terms but his own. So it's sad for me because it's sad because it could survive if it evolved and changed, but there are people who want it to be. There's not people that want it to be. It just feels like, I feel like Grant has run out of time. He's run out of money. He's run out of ideas and inspiration to take it forward. And if Basenotes could survive, but I think he's taken it as far as he can, and I don't think he's willing to accept that or even conscience that for a second. That's kind of how it feels.
It's sad.
I should say from an outsider's point of view as well. I am not privy to anything. It just kind of looks like that and feels that way. You know, he's had real issues in the last year with getting the website to work, which is pretty basic stuff. There's other commercial aspects of the website. I know I was talking to somebody today who was like, they wanted to become a Basenotes Plus member, but there was nowhere on the website for them to give Grant the money to do that. Literally, there was no kind of way of accessing Grant to get that extra level of access to the website. So literally, there was no sort of button that said pay here. That's really, really basic stuff. Like, how are you supposed to get more money if there's no way for people to give you said money? And it feels like it might just have got a bit much for him. Maybe he would come back and say, no, that's total bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like. You don't, and I don't, you know, I don't know what that's like. I have no idea what it must be like to run a website like that for 25 years. But I do know from an outsider's point of view that it looks like he's had a really good run. And if I were him, I'd be like, let somebody else take over. But I think his worry is if he sells it, somebody's going to completely change the culture of it and what makes it great. So I don't know.
Does he still want to be a part of it?
I don't know that. I think so, yes. I just think that he feels like he's been worked into a corner, that he's been like put into a corner where he doesn't want to compromise any further, or he doesn't want to compromise at all, but he can't find any ways out without compromising, so that he would rather have the product die or become unusable rather than hand off his baby to someone else.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like from the outside. Now, I'm not saying that is what's happening. It just kind of feels like my analysis towards it. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know why he wouldn't relinquish control if it's at the point where he literally can't take it any further. You know, and it feels like it would be a huge shame to let it go to the wall simply because he wants to be the captain of the ship.
I feel like if it was to go, I think the forum section would be the most missed.
Absolutely.
As I said, the discussions where people were talking about, the more technical sides of things. Because, there are some Facebook groups and stuff around that I know people be a part of, but historically, Basenotes was, I'm sure if you talk to any like indie perfumer or amateur perfumer, or even some of you maybe work their way into a company, they'll probably talk about 20 years ago or 15 years, 10 years ago, reading Basenotes and people sharing knowledge and how useful it was. And it'd be kind of sad. It's an industry that you'd hope is opening up for people. And it's like, if that goes, it would be one resource gone, and actually probably the most major one that'd be gone from them, if that makes sense. I don't know. People could say, I don't know if they'd miss the actual reviews, or let's just say like the more fragrantico perfumer side of the website.
Perfumer.
Yeah.
Perfumer.
I don't know if they'd miss that side as much. And it could be one of the things people don't realize what they've lost until they've actually lost it.
Yeah. They've got a really hardcore of long-term fans. They've got a real solid group of people who have been involved and who are like perfume enthusiasts and perfume lovers, real hardcore fucking people in that regard, that have tried to keep the website open, offered all the help and the can and stuff like that, and have done loads of different things as far as trying to generate like fucking like funds and stuff like that, and there's loads of really good ideas on there and stuff, but it looks like that it looks like it's just sort of like it looks like there's been like a storm, like a perfect storm where it can't go on as it has gone on before. The model has got to change, and I think that because the internet's changed, the model's got to change. He's got to change, and I think that he's really not willing, not able to change. He doesn't want to. He wants it to stay the way that it's always been, but just be as popular.
Well, I think there's a cause for both sides there. I think in his defense, I think it should maintain the sort of core values that made Basenotes great. But yes, I think it needs to sort of evolve in a way that it can sort of work nowadays. Like I wouldn't want it just to turn into another Fragrantica or, God forbid, like a TikTok thing. You know what I mean? It's like we've got that. Like, if I'm sure there are people out there who could probably do some good with it, and make it evolve in the way that I'm trying to think. Like even the forums, like help, like actually just first of all sorting out the, as you said, like the fact that the guy couldn't become a plus member, little things like that. That people can actually, especially people now that are hearing that it's failing, I'm sure there's going to be a rush of people who think, crap, no, I want to try and help this. That people can actually have an account and try and link it in some way to, I don't think like a video platform, maybe even something as silly as like start a podcast channel through it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can actually talk to people, interview them, and can sort of create a buzz around it, but link it to that. And I'm sure there's many ways that it can sort of evolve in today's age, but I'd want it to maintain the thing that made Basenotes good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, when you said in his defense, I don't want it to come across that I'm like attacking him.
No, I didn't mean it that way. I'm almost playing like devil's advocate. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not even that far. I was just
like, if he heard this, I wouldn't want him to think that I was attacking him. That's not what I'm kind of saying. I'm just sort of saying what I see it as. Like, I think that he. I forgot what I was going to fucking say there. Fucking.
My grandmother would say it must have been a lie.
Yes, that's my mother says that as well. I wouldn't want him to think I'm attacking him. That's not what I'm saying. And like you say, in his defense, I would want it to stay the same as it's always been, or that it like not lose its core values. It just needs fresh impetus. I think it needs a new direction, while maintaining this kind of like high end. Somebody mentioned connoisseur like content, like there needs to be a place for that kind of thing, and Basenotes could be that. Basenotes could definitely be that for the modern age. Like it could be like the vanguard, you know what I mean? But it's got to attract new users. It has to, otherwise it's going to become a museum,
Yeah.
you know. And I was talking to Thomas from Stumptown Smells earlier, and it's like collectors like me and him and even you and Eugene and Galen, like our time has passed as far as the fragrance community is concerned. Like,
Yeah.
if there's a very good chance, if you're watching this stream now, right, you are not a collector the like of which the modern collector is. You know, you're not going to be someone who's interested in clones, in compliments, in panty drawers, in looking at big boobs, in looking at, like, well, I know how much of a fan you are of big boobs, but you're not going to be, that's not the content you're looking for. And there is still a market, but it is a much smaller market. It feels like it's decreasing, but it's not actually getting smaller. What it is that the volume, it's decreasing by percentage. You know, the market share of that is decreasing all the time, and the other is growing like a fucking behemoth, you know.
It's interesting because I do see it on a daily basis where I work. The gap, it's like the generational gap in how people perceive what they're looking for fragrance, their sort of experience with it, how they engage with it on a daily basis it can be very different, if that makes sense. Like a very young generation, usually they just stick mostly to TikTok, which is a completely different platform that talks and fragrances in usually a completely different way to even the people who are big on TikTok, for example, in the fragrance community there, could be very small on Instagram, and the people on Instagram have a very big presence on Instagram, but very small on TikTok. And you have like these sort of, it's not like there's not much, very little crossover. Um,
Yeah,
I'd suppose Basenotes it could almost be put in the same realm of things like MySpace and where Facebook is going and Yahoo. You know what I mean? Them sort of old proto sort of social networking sort of forums and sites.
yeah,
The ones that usually survive evolve. I suppose that's why Instagram are doing things like Threads, which is their version of Twitter.
yes,
Because they see Twitter's faltering, but they still see there's like an opportunity there.
yeah, to get in
Wonder
early.
whether Basenote should have done something like that. You don't have to completely change everything, but you can add an element that sort of just keeps it.
Yeah,
I hate the word I'm going to use, but I guess this word is very important in this discussion. It's relevant. Do you know what I mean? I suppose Basenotes is not as popular because it's not seen as relevant anymore. Like it's not giving you something that people are looking for or they happen to stumble upon. Um, and as I said, like if it had a podcast or something, maybe it would have helped. Or because I still think there's a lot of space. I mean, there's some brilliant perfume podcasts popping up. I think there's still a lot of space for more podcasts and more people to talk. And because there's so many stories and anecdotes and a lot of information and things that people would love to know and people would love to interview and talk to. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like a bottomless well, and it's a new platform that people can um, experience. And why not do something like that somehow?
yeah. Like, I would think that, like, spreading the word, like, on social media, like the marketability of, like the marketability of base notes and stuff like that, making marketing kind of like moves like on socials. You know what I mean? Like, that's like very important these days.
Mm,
Um, and it doesn't seem like base notes has any of that. Like, kind of marketing thing going on, you know,
It's
which is, go on.
sorry, I like. Do you know there's loads of blogs out there, really good blogs that people write about perfumery. Like you have Bois de Jasmine, and there was Kafkaesque.
Yes,
They're very personal and subjective, and some people don't like their reviews, and it's fine. It's like Luca Turin, it's their
yes,
opinion. Don't be offended by it. But like, for example, I'm going to use Persolaise as an example. Persolaise is doing very well. He's growing, but if you look where he started off as a blog, then he went to YouTube, and he's on Instagram. I don't think he's at TikTok yet. I don't think he'll ever go that far. But
Jesus,
the other blogs are kind of forgotten about.
yeah,
Do you see what I'm trying to say?
yes.
Like,
It's like I was saying earlier, the internet moves fast, and it will leave you behind
yeah,
double quick and think very little of it, you know. And think it would think very, very little of like there's no sentimentality, you know. There's no room for sentimentality um on the internet, and it's a shame. Um, but there's no, I don't want to say loyalty. Loyalty is not the right word, but like you can easily just get lost. You can easily get lost in the shuffle, you know. Like the internet's like this kind of constant, like this constant generation of like bubbles. Do you know when you get like, do you know when you get like in a bath and you have a bubble bath and the bubbles start to form and bubbles start forming on top of other bubbles, and then some bubbles pop and some bubbles disappear and some get bigger and then smaller ones come along, and it's this constant generation, this churning. That's what the internet's like. That's what the internet's like. And if you're not careful, even the biggest bubbles will pop, and you've got to stay relevant. You've got to stay solid. You've got to move. You've got to innovate. You've got to change. But you've also got to have like basic fucking principles as well, because you're like a human. You're a
yeah.
human, you know.
But I think, I mean, Basenotes still has a lot to give. I mean, the fact that it's one of the oldest platforms, that gives it a bit of heritage. And
Yes, absolutely. You
it,
can't buy what Basenotes has got.
yeah, Creed would love to have what they've got, but
Yes.
it's, they should definitely play into that. And why not? Obviously, don't like just give you something bad and just talk about we've got heritage, but they give you. I mean, no one's going to buy into that. But if it gets this act together and gives us something a little bit new, like as I said, like maybe a podcast or some other sort of, I don't know, user interface, like updating the forum, make it more interesting somehow, more prompts, but really sort of, even have a presence. They don't have to do anything on Instagram or YouTube, but just have a presence there. Like, it is Basenotes, it is the website, that's the thing, but it's there. Do you know what I mean? It's got its hands in other places.
Yeah, like it's got like marketing. You could use YouTube for marketing. You could use YouTube. You could use YouTube against itself. You could start doing shorts. You could start a TikTok channel saying, "I found out about this fragrance on Basenotes." Do you know what I mean? I found out that this perfumer made this perfume, and then he made this other perfume. So maybe I like that as well. You know, like that's not the type of thing I would do personally. Like I wouldn't do that for my channel's me talking bollocks in general, but just about perfume. Do you know what I mean? But if I was working for another brand, if I was working for Basenotes, I would be having social media accounts on every single fucking one of them, advertising the fact that I am there, I exist, and I am relevant, and I will make you cleverer. That's not a word, which is ironic. I will make you smarter. I will make you more informed. I will give you the edge. You will know more because of what I can fucking give you and what other people in there with 25 years experience on the internet we know what we're fucking talking about. You know what I mean? Like, that is the kind of thing. It's like these other places like Fragrantica and fucking Parfuma, who the fuck are they? You know what I mean? We're the OG. These people fucking wish they were fucking us, but they're fucking not. You know what I mean? I'm exactly with you, and then do a podcast as well, where, I mean, I would love to do a podcast. I mean, I've told you before, I tried to get Gail and Thomas and Eugene to do a podcast with us, and it just never happened. I mean, to be fair, they've got lives and stuff like that, so they can't sit and dream of making podcasts all day like I can. But
Nick,
it's like
Nick meant the Scent Phone app by Demi Rawling. So as Basenotes, you know, because they've been around longer than Demi Rawling. You know, like the whole app thing. I remember I went to school, secondary school, with a guy who made an app, and that was like what, 15 odd years ago.
Yeah.
And like, if it could have been the first to develop an app, and I'm sure people would have bloody used it. If you made a good app as a database for perfumes and stuff, people probably would have downloaded it, especially 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I don't know why there's not an app. I don't know why Parfumo doesn't have an app. I don't know why Parfumo does have an app, but it's shit. I mean, it's shit. It's so basic.
How tech savvy a lot of the people behind these things are.
Yeah, exactly. Like
not.
Basenotes, like the thing with Basenotes is the guy isn't so. I mean, you just have to look at the website and understand it. I mean, he's obviously knows more than I do about making a fucking about making a website and content and stuff like that. But it's like there are like an app would just be like an app to be able to track what you've been wearing, right? Just that would get lots of frag heads, and an app to keep track of what you own, how many bottles of, right? What you've worn, what you've had, right? And when. That as a basic starting point for an app would be brilliant, right? But it's like I feel like it goes back to the thing I was saying about Grant. He's done it for 25 years, and it kind of feels like the internet's left him behind. You know, all you've got to do is go to Basenotes and kind of see that that's the case.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not knocking them, because, like someone said to us earlier, 25 years is a fucking hell of a run for an internet website. You know, fuck me. It's incredible. Nobody could ever take away from him what he's done as far as and how well he's done by Basenotes and the community. He's really, really stuck with it in good faith, and he has tried to keep the core of his friends and users and clientele happy and fucking nourished by this website. It's just gone beyond him. Unfortunately, that's what it feels like.
It just shows you how vicious and fast the world can move. Do you mean the world has no loyalties to you in a way, does it? You can have something great and keep doing it really well and trying your best, but it can be brutal and just leave you behind. And you in a way you might not have done anything wrong. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
I do think a Basenotes app would be, even now, like, it's better late than never. A Basenotes app would be great.
Yes.
And I'm sure
you could just have like a forum box, like a chat box, like a forum, like, you know, like a thread of these things. It would just be the most.
It's like almost like Twitter user face, where it's like almost real time and people can talk. And
yes, exactly. It's just like a big open fucking forum. You could have one big open forum where you could subscribe to people who you wanted to subscribe to, and then if people wanted to post adverts on there, then you would have to take fucking 30% or whatever the model is. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are ways to make it work, but it feels like he's not interested in that. He wants it to go back to the way it was 10, 15 years ago, when, like the same way I do about perfumes, I want perfumes to go back to the way they were 30 and 40 years ago, where there were the top ingredients, and there weren't all these like fucking massively overwhelming like conglomerates that controlled everything, and there was a lot more plurality. The fact of the matter is, that's not happening. It's not. It's just not fucking happening. And it's kind of the same thing for Basenotes. Um, Basenotes in its current iteration has had its day.
It needs some like someone mentioned there that Julian Raskin helps with the Demi Rawlings app, and things like that can be useful when you actually have a real perfumer or someone in the industry, not just for ideas but for some insights. For example, Michael Edwards. He
Yes.
had that company and the thing Fragrances of the World and Wiki Parfum. A
Yes.
lot of the fragrances that he do you know who his evaluator was? Guy Robert.
Okay. Yes.
Guy Robert had retired, and he knew him, and he's like, "Do you want to be the evaluator for?" So all the fragrances, what families they're in, and his website, most, especially going back to obviously when Guy Robert was still alive, they're all mostly done by him. Obviously, it was more than a one-man job now because there's a lot more releases. But
yeah,
that obviously really, really helped him. That sort of inside some knowledge. It gives you a little bit of a cutting edge. I'm sure there's many perfumers that have used Basenotes, and maybe a part of it, if they could help, just bring some ideas, and great.
yeah,
Do like ask a perfumer. You know what I mean? You put people like Lifetime, every different people can come on, and every Friday or something, it might be like an hour or half an hour, and you can ask them questions and they just answer you in real time. I never know. Like, that sounds like a stupid idea, but you get where I'm going with it.
No, I know exactly. It's not a stupid idea. It would be tough to do because I imagine these people would end up wanting money for the time. But
But it might end up if you're spending lots of money when it's failing, actually, if you're spending a little bit of money when it's doing well,
yes.
it might.
No, I totally get what you're saying. A little bit of investment when you're doing well. I just don't think he can. I don't think he can find his way forward to relinquishing any part of that website because it's his baby, and because he wants it to stay the same as it's always been, and yet but at the same time he wonders why it's not successful. Like why the user numbers are dwindling. And it kind of feels like he doesn't understand, because he loves it, and because he thinks it's as it should be, and he as he thinks he's got like a really solid idea and it's amazing, and if only everybody else would see it that way. You know what I mean? But the problem he's got is that it's been so long, and the numbers don't lie, and you can't argue with numbers. Dwindling ad revenue, apparently, his public post on there was like, I haven't taken a wage from the website for months. I haven't been I can barely afford to keep the servers on. I can barely afford to keep like the hosting going. I can barely afford to I can bet basically it's sucking him dry, and it's at this point now. This is like, it'll fail very quickly from here on in. Somebody said to me the other day, it'll be gone in 3 years. I was like, it'll not take 3 years. I personally don't think that website it'll take 3 years for that website to die. I don't think it won't take any website 3 years to die if it's in that kind of situation. It'll sink very quickly when the end comes, and he's getting close to it. It's getting close to the end. I don't think he realizes the state of which it's almost terminal, and it won't be able to be saved by him or anyone else. And that is sad that he is willing to let the website go to the wall rather than hand it off to somebody else and save his life's work.
I would also I'd add for him, obviously, he's obviously very close to it for 25 years. He sees the back end of everything, and he- we're probably missing a lot of the picture, if that makes sense. And I don't want to personally sound like I'm passing too quick a judgment or anything. I would hope to encourage it, in the sense that I hope it does stay around. I actually think it's going to be, it does have a useful place, especially the forum side. I just think it probably just needs to evolve for its own good, in a good way. Keep all the core things that make it great. Um, but as you said, just reach out into different platforms and diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket as well.
Yeah, I know I'm being quite strident as I usually am, and I'm saying things like, like I'm not being general. I mean, I'm as subtle as a fucking sledgehammer, aren't I? Do you know what I mean? Like
No, 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 no.
it's not me strength, but like what I would very gently and respectfully. I do hope I'm not coming across disrespectful, because I really don't mean disrespect to
No,
him.
no.
But what I would very earnestly say to him, look, it's time. Done. You don't owe anything else to this project, to these people, to this website. It's your life's work. Somebody else could take that and ensure its future in it for the next 25 years.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
somebody um it's somebody who could get capital into it, because it doesn't sound like he's got money to invest in it. It's
Mm.
somebody who could invest new ideas, more modern, someone who could bring a team on board of other people to do that kind of thing.
Sometimes you do need it. Like, if you want to grow, you need a team. It's one, like,
Yes,
you can,
you
like, even
you can't be like, the world isn't like that anymore, is it? It's not like you can't just take on the world by yourself anymore.
yeah, it's like, I think even Leonardo da Vinci would be stretched with all the skills you need to do a lot of things nowadays, especially on the internet.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
This is not a world for polymaths anymore. You need to know there's too much detail in everything. You need people who can just concentrate on one thing. Um, and usually when you grow, you'd find that I think, like, for him, a bit of money, he needs a team. Really, really go back to the drawing board. Um, I feel like I don't. I mean, there is. I know you. I feel like it still could revive itself. I still think there's an opportunity there, and mainly because it does have something good going for it at its core, and it does have a good history. Um,
yeah.
it's, I suppose, you like football. It's like a football team. Like, just, it's kind of like, I remember, was it Rangers who got chucked down to the bottom of the leagues for the
Yes,
whole
yes,
tax
that's
season.
right. Yeah,
But what helped them is that if there's money behind you, and you have a good history and a little bit of it, you can sort of bring yourself back up. Um, I don't know if that's a really good parallel or analogy, but
yeah. I don't. The thing with it is that it's more his is more being like a slow decline, and if he's not careful, he's going to reach terminal velocity. He's going to reach a point of no return. He's going to reach a point where it can't be saved by anyone. I, my opinion, my analysis is that I don't think he can save it now. I don't think he's got the tools. I don't think he's got the means, the motive, or the opportunity to do it anymore. Um, I think he's holding on to it for sentimental reasons rather than anything else. And I think that if he doesn't let it go, it's going to be like, do you know when ships, like galleons, like old wooden ships with the
yeah,
sails, and a sail used to get broken, and it would come off and it would go into the water. If they didn't cut the rope, if they didn't get rid of the sail, it would drag the ship under the waves with it, right? And that's kind of, I mean, it sounds really harsh, but that's kind of where he's at. He's taken that website down with him at the minute. He doesn't have the ability or the opportunity to save it at the minute. Somebody else probably could, because they would have money, they would have new ideas, they would have expertise in web development and all that kind of thing that he doesn't have. Because if he has got it, he's not showing it. And I think, and like I said to you before, I think that website, if he's not careful, is going to go into, it's going to reach a terminal velocity soon. It's going to reach a velocity at which point it can't be saved, it can't be pulled back, and it's going to go down the plug hole. And if it all depends on what he wants to do with it, you know. But there's loads of stuff there that's totally worth saving, like the forums, the knowledge, the accounts, people's accounts. You know what I mean? People's like, you know, people have like spent years on Basenotes being invested in like each other, you know, and following each other's journey. They're going to lose all of that, you know. They're going to lose a home for themselves. It's not just his to lose, but I really hope this isn't coming across that I'm being a bad. I mean, I'm saying things that he will not want to be hearing.
Well, another layer to this, I would argue, and then this is quite sad when you think of it, but Frank said the DI, he hopes they stay. The DI sub-forum especially has so much knowledge and discussion. I think even people who would have been part of Basenotes, who use Basenotes, it's not like if Basenotes would leave, they wouldn't have a home. I think they've almost established themselves a new home somewhere else anyway. And they come back to Basenotes every now and again. So I don't know how many people would, even if we weren't talking about this, if Basenotes went tonight, and
how
no
many
one was
people would
speaking,
feel it?
do you think so? I mean, people talk about it, but do you think people would? Because like,
Would they miss it genuinely in their lives? Would it become like a problem for them if they didn't have Basenotes? You're probably right. They probably wouldn't. In its current iteration, you know.
Because these people will probably be active on Instagram, and they're doing their thing mostly on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter or TikTok or Demi Rawlings app. I don't know.
I imagine there's a very particular type of person who would miss Basenotes based on the history and its cultural significance. And I think that you could trade on Basenotes' cultural significance if you wanted to, by making a song and dance of the website, you know, a big sentimental thing about it. The usability of the website, I don't use Basenotes very much. I always found it a little bit, it's clunky and it's awkward and it's very, in the worst way, vintage website, you know.
Fragrantica like that, to be honest with you, though, as well.
Fragrantica is an absolutely fucking abhorrent website to use.
But do you know what? Fragrantica reminds me, it's a bit of the Jeremy Fragrance of the because it's kind of comical.
It's all fart and no
people go
shit.
there. Yeah, people go there for almost the comical value. A lot of people I've talked to that they say, I don't like Fragrantica, but they'll go there just to look at outrageous things or pick out the coconut note. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that Fragrantica really has going for it at the moment. Is some sort of comical value.
The comical value. It's an absolutely fucking woeful website to use. They are just harvesting the ad revenue from that, and they're on a power trip. The people who run it are I mean, it's been well documented how much of a bunch of bastards the fucking people who run it are. And Grant's not a bunch of bastards. Do you know what I mean? But for Grant, like, as an absolute fucking a dickish fucking website to use, it's awful. But it's not. It's not. Basenotes looks. It looks old and it looks dilapidated, and it doesn't look like it's been neglected. It looks, oh, I don't want to use that word. It looks like, how can I put it? It looks old, you know, and like it needs more than just a lick of paint. It needs a new wall putting in somewhere. It needs like new modern materials used and fucking like sophisticated methods to save the actual fucking building itself, you know. It needs something. It needs inspiration, and I don't think that. I think it's overwhelmed. I think that the modern internet has overwhelmed Grant as far as what it looks like from the exterior, you know, like how it comes across. And I would be somebody who would I would use Basenotes if it was easier to use, if it was a better website. You know what I mean? Like, the people are here, and people have made. Frank has said the legacy threads that go back to 2003 are irreplaceable. Exactly. That's the sort of thing that needs to be saved. And it's going to be lost, and Grant is going to be the reason that they're going to be lost. He has the opportunity to make himself a hero by preserving that. But he also has the power to be the villain if he lets it go to the wall and the website fails and all that's lost.
As I said, the forum, I think, would be the most missed bit. I think that is what really it had going for it, and that's why I think he should focus on his strength. That even Frank has mentioned, it goes back to 2003. There is so much information out there on Basenotes, even some real technical information, how far you want to go into it. I think not even enough. I think there could be even more. I guess it's down to just us as well, if we want to engage in it, because I'm sure people in the comments here, everyone, we could go to there and discuss and talk about these things. But I think if we had, like, as I said, a podcast, I don't know, like even ask a perfumer or get someone on board that isn't in the industry. I'm sure he has connections to really, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think where me and you slightly differ is you think he could do with somebody coming to help him. If I were him, I would cut ties with it completely.
And let someone new.
Sorry.
Just let someone new do it. Take over.
Yeah, that's my personal opinion. Like, that's like what I think. That's what I would do personally. I'd be like, I mean, to be fair, the bloke should be incredibly proud of what he's done. He has done something. It was truly original. It was truly innovative. It was a passion project that he made work for him for a while. But those things are the hardest things to let go. And that's what it feels like. That's what it sounds like and looks like. I just hope that in future something changes and that the website doesn't go offline or doesn't become unusable and all that incredible information is lost. Galen said that it looks like one of those perfume shops you see in a dead mall that has some serious gems. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. It's after 10:30, Jura Rose, and I'm tired, and I'm gonna go.
That was quick. I'm gonna go.
Tired
Bye.
now. I'm fucked.
Bye.
I've been fucked for a little while now. I've been fucked for a little while now, but I'm extremely fucking tired, and my arse is killing us, frankly, from sitting in this seat. I am weak. I have a weak bottom, as we know. You know,
Yeah.
it's not an ideal setup, but there we are. Jura, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an outrageous chat.
Yeah, I can't even remember what we spoke about. We spoke about a lot, didn't we?
Sheep res. We talked about sheep res. We talked about Mount Rushmore.
That was fun.
That was fun. I enjoyed that. What else did we talk about? We talked about formulas and we didn't talk about Hermes.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I did. I threw some shade. There you
Oh,
go.
what shade did you throw?
You'll have to go back and watch it. Remember?
Oh, fuck's sake. Okay. Hermes. It's looking likely that Hermes are going to be making some eau de parfums out of their eau de toilette, and there's going to be riots because people are going to start and try and buy the old eau de toilettes and stock up on them. So the price of them is going to go through the roof. Maybe. We don't know. I'm speculating.
Hermes are going to
Anyway.
get skinned alive and turned into a Birkin. With this.
Yes, that's right. The new Duck Birkin with duck leather. Cuir de Canard.
Cuir de Canard.
Cuir de Canard.
You know
right
what?
Then.
I'm not
For
surprised
what?
that will be a fragrance in the future. Cuir de Canard.
Cuir de Canard. It probably will. I mean, you've got baby leather. Cuir de Ange, angel leather. You know what I mean? Dodgy as fuck.
All right. I'll let you rest. Everyone, the duck has done well tonight, and 2 hours and nearly 40 minutes.
Yes, that's right. That is a superlative performance from
That's the
myself.
Lord of the Rings movie, you know? That's
oh God. Much more entertaining though. Righty-ho. Thank you very much, Jura Rose, and thank you everybody else for watching us. And we will see you all again soon.
Good night. Good night. Wa'an.
What?
I'm just forget it.